the surface transportation rules are now as it relates to large acquisitions, we give it a relatively low probability, maybe 25, 30, 35% chance of happening. The STB is actually in August reviewing some of its rules to streamline some of the processes that it deals with. But it's not impossible, but again, we think that the probability is below 50%. If it were to happen, it would create the first transcon railroad, and that could be good. It could be good because a rail car would be touchless because it wouldn't have to maybe be interchanged with other railroads. And that does, the more time a rail car is touched, the more times something could go wrong. And so that would probably reduce, I would have to say it probably could reduce some accidents. It could also reduce costs for the railroads in general. So it could be a good thing. Shippers might have an issue with it because they might be afraid, even though that Norfolk Southern, Union Pacific don't necessarily compete, against each other directly, they might be concerned that, losing one of the large Class 1 rails would result in less competition. And the railroads for the STB hurdle have to prove that this deal is in the public interest. So, you're going to have a lot of constituents and stakeholders voice their opinions both for the deal and against the deal. And again, that's all assuming that these two parties can come to an agreement. We put out a note last week where we thought, the enterprise value for that transaction could be in the high 80 billion. So we'll see, what kind of a deal the two can hammer out.
All right, Lee, you're kind of going along the track that I was thinking of.
Along the track, I get it.
Oh,
I get it.
I like that. Didn't even think
Little
about
railroad
that.
humor.
Railroad humor. Can you go more into the regulations? Because you started talking about that, but what are some more of those sticking points that could cause this maybe not to go through?
Well, we've seen a couple large mergers. The last large one was Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern. Kansas City Southern was the smallest Class 1 railroad, and they were exempt from these new rules that went into effect in 2001. And the rules kind of came about because Burlington Northern and Canadian National were looking to merge. And so even though they had a lower bar, it took quite some time for the deal to close. I think it was about 18 months. We suspect that under the current rules, a deal between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern could take about 2 years to get STB approval. So it's going to be a long process. So even if the two come out tomorrow and say, hey, we're doing a deal, and the shareholders approve it, this could be 2 years until we see an actual transcon railroad.
So, Lee, I'm going to go get my floppy disk out circa 1988. I got my Union Pacific and my Norfolk Southern earnings models there. I'm going to put them together like they're merging. What cost do I take out? What are the synergies, do you think? What's the reason for doing this deal?
So it's pretty interesting. So, Norfolk Southern went through its own cost-cutting process as it started to embrace precision scheduling railroading. For those that aren't familiar with it, it's pretty much Six Sigma for the rail industry. So it's just about sweating assets. And they laid off people. And so, it's not like there's a lot of fat there, but what I suspect is that they maybe, they'll maybe be laying off some people in corporate, because you don't need two CEOs, you don't need two CFOs, you don't need necessarily as many salespeople and accountants. So there's that aspect of it, and also, if they are able to provide a lower cost service, they might be able to, even though they can raise rates, provided at a lower cost to shippers. So I think that's going to be the big, what can they do for shippers, is can they lower the cost curve because of the fact that, again, the rail car is being touched less, and are they able to pass that on to shippers? I think if they can make a case for that, they'll have an easier time of getting a deal done.